Psalm 100, a psalm of praise. Sing ye loud unto the Lord, all the earth. Serve the Lord with gladness. Come before him with joyfulness. Know ye that even the Lord is God. He hath made us, and not we ourselves. We are his people, and the sheep of his pasture. Enter into his gates with praise, and into his courts with rejoicing. Praise him, and bless his name. For the Lord is good. His mercy is everlasting, and his truth is from generation to generation. I was reading from the Geneva Bibles, Psalm 100. Good morning. Hello, and welcome to another edition of The Other Side. I'd like to take this Thanksgiving morning as an opportunity to remind us of our inescapable Calvinistic heritage. This channel was put together in response to the massive amount of anti-Calvinistic material that I came across on YouTube, a lot of it coming from the new IFB, some from the Southern Baptists, some from the Arminians and others, some from cults who despise the theological system of Calvinism. But one thing we can't deny is the Calvinistic influence and the roots of our current religious liberty, and especially in the United States. Every Thanksgiving, we're reminded that those who planted their feet on this country and first established a colony that emphasized freedom of worship were the Pilgrims. They were Geneva Bible carrying Calvinists. And that being the case, that has been a very heavy influence in our nation from the very beginning. Let me read from a book, and this was given to me not too long ago by a friend of mine. It is the Calvinism and History by N.S. McFertridge, and it was first published in 1888. I believe it was. Let me take a look here, maybe before that. Let's see, 1882. Let me just read part of a paragraph. The chapter is entitled Calvinism as a Political Force in the History of the United States. We come now to one of the brightest pages of Calvinistic history, that which records the political influence of the Calvinists in the formation of the American colonies. I need not dwell on Calvinism in the colonies prior to the struggle with the mother country for independence. It is enough to bear in mind that the Puritans who formed the great bulk of the settlers of New England were rigid Calvinists who had brought with them all their high principles of civil liberty and all their aversion to the ceremonies and government of the Anglican Church and all their devotion to the doctrines of the great reformers. Let us come at once to the great revolutionary conflict by which the colonies became a free and independent nation. My proposition is this, a proposition which history clearly demonstrates, that this American nation, which stretches her vast and varied territory from sea to sea, and from the bleak hills of the north to the sunny plains of the south, was the purchase chiefly of the Calvinists, and the inheritance which they bequeathed to all liberty-loving people. Now, something just to remember on this Thanksgiving Day. After of course, we have the Pilgrims who came with their Reformed theology and their Geneva Bible. After that, I believe it was a few years after that, we had in England the English Civil War. Now, if you're familiar with the English Civil War, you had the Roundheads or the Parliamentarians, which came to be led by Oliver Cromwell, who opposed the king, and the primary reason was that the king was reverting, as Charles I, was reverting back into Roman Catholicism. He had a Catholic wife. He was pushing Catholicism on England in subtle ways, and the Puritans began to revolt against that, and it finally culminated in the English Civil War. Now, the Parliamentarians won. Charles I lost his head. His son fled to France, I believe, came back later and brought in some more religious tyranny for a while. But during that time period, there was actually a Civil War battle here. This wasn't between the North and the South. It was between the Protestant Puritans of Maryland and the Roman Catholics of Maryland. We know that Maryland was established as a Catholic colony. But there's also Puritans there. They were fleeing the tyranny of Anglicanism and the royal decrees of Charles I. What had happened, the Roman Catholics had taken advantage of the situation. There was a shortage of women, for one thing. These fellows came over here. There wasn't very many women that came with them in their colonies. And the Protestants had wives. And the battle cry of the Roman Catholics when they attacked the Protestant colony, the Puritan colony, was "Hail to St. Mary's and wives for us all." This battle actually involved a little sea battle. I believe there's one little boat involved, a handful of men. It wasn't a huge battle, but the Puritans were victorious, and they then, for a while, I think, took over the colony. It's been a while since I've read that. Somebody gave me an old booklet on that, published by Johns Hopkins University, but it gave an illustration of the battle for religious liberty, even on this land before the American Revolution. This, of course, was led by Calvinists. It was the Calvinists who paid the price, who fought the battles, and provided the ethical fortitude to establish a nation based on Christian principles. We think about the idea of limited government, of division of power. That is a Calvinistic principle. You find that within the Presbyterian Church. I was an elder in the Presbyterian Church for about 5 years before I became a pastor again of the Community Bible Church. And within that system, you have no pope. You don't have one individual in charge. You have your presbytery. You have the local church session, which is involved with the pastor and the elder, which involves the pastor and the elders. Then you have the presbytery, which involves the local churches within a certain district. And then you go to the General Assembly, which is a group of the entire denomination. In that General Assembly, they vote every year on someone to moderate it, but there's no one in charge. And that's the principle of division of power. In some congregational churches, you have local rule, but usually there's one or two guys in charge. You get to the Roman system, Episcopalianism, the Anglican system, you have individuals who hold a lot of power. That's not the case in the Presbyterian system, where you have a division of power. This was incorporated into our government, coming from Calvinism and the Reformed faith. And when you go then from that point prior to that, you go to the Revolution. The backbone of the Revolution were the Scotch-Irish Presbyterians. They had been pushed out of their homeland by Anglicanism and the English royalty, who opposed Presbyterianism. And they were not about to become slaves again in this country to the Anglican system and to the king. And so when push came to shove, they were squarely on the side of the idea of independence from England. The First Baptist Church in America, founded by Roger Williams, was a Calvinistic Baptist church. The Southern Baptist Church was a Calvinistic church. You can go on and on. So the influence of Calvinism at the beginning, or the primary influence in the thinking, the theological thinking of the United States, was Calvinistic. This goes also to George Whitefield, who prior to the Revolution was crisscrossing the colonies and preaching, evangelizing. And the backbone of his theology was Calvinism. So then, you may disagree with the theology, but you cannot escape the fact that your system, many times, is built upon it. Many systems had a Calvinistic beginning and then either left that, drifted away from it, or later denied it, but it's built upon it. Secondly, without the blood of Calvinists, the martyrs, and then those who went to battle for the idea of individual conscience, liberty of conscience, and independence from Anglicanism, state church, were primarily Calvinists. You would not have the freedom of worship had it not been for those who made that sacrifice. So, from the Reformation to the American Revolution, Calvinism has fought for liberty of conscience. And it's been a long, tough road. You can go back and you say, what about this guy or this guy? They had slaves or they had a state church. Well, it took a while before liberty of conscience was able to set in, and people had a consistent idea of what it would be. But without the breaking away, and sometimes it was a gradual breaking away of the reformers, of the Calvinistic way of thought, freedom of thought as we know it would not exist. So just a few thoughts on this Thanksgiving morning. And if you have any question or comments, please leave them in the comment section. May the Lord bless you in your search for truth.